Hey, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Ashley, and we are Tiny Shiny Home.
How much did it cost us to build our 7,200 watt, 28 kilowatt hour, 5,000 watt off-grid solar power system?
Less than you think.
Since relocating to our off-grid desert homestead property a couple of years ago, we've been busy with all sorts of important infrastructure projects.
First was our high-tensile electric fence, then our solar-powered water pump, and then our very first structure, a hyper-adobe solar shed office.
This would house all our power and electrical gear for our solar power system and double as an office and a guest room.
As you can imagine, we get asked a ton of questions about how we build the system and how much it costs.
The first question can be answered by this detailed planning and installing and building video here, and the second is this video. Before we talk cost, let's talk about sizing, because the size of your battery bank and your inverter and your solar panels are all going to have a big effect on your bottom line. This is the size that we chose based on our needs, so feel free to use it as a reference when designing your own off-grid power system.
7,200 watts of solar power.
By connecting 30 used 240 watt panels in series of 5, we could create high voltage arrays that charge well even in cloudy conditions. This also helped keep our wire size down, as we had a fairly long run from the ground mount to the charge controllers.
28 kilowatt hours lithium battery bank.
A key part of us saving tons of money was buying 280 amp hour cells shipped directly from China. We knew the BMS would only have 16 cell inputs, so we opted for 32 total batteries, grouping them in packs of 2.
5,000 watt, 120 volt power inverter.
We settled on a 5,000 watt Quattro inverter charger from Victron. It runs 120 volt AC power and surges to 10,000 watts, which should be more than enough for us. The decision to go with Victron also tied to our charge controllers, BMS, the ability to monitor the system remotely, and manage all power systems on the property from one app. We chose 120 volt single phase power as we plan on supplementing with gas and wood for heating and cooking, line drying our clothes, and building naturally with earth bags using thermal heat transfer and passive solar. Again, we cover a ton of important information about how all this stuff connects together in our previous wiring and install videos, so make sure you check that out if you have questions.
How much will your off-grid solar system cost?
Get a better understanding of your project and save thousands of dollars with our solar cost calculator. Besides an intelligent spreadsheet that does the calculations for you, it includes links to everything we bought on our off-grid solar power install and nearly 1 hour of videos that cover behind-the-scenes thoughts, details, and tips.
Grab yourself a copy in the link below.
Now, maybe you don't need a cost calculator, you just want to read through everything, click the links to go buy it yourself, you just want to see all the numbers written down. We got you covered there too. You can go to this link on our website and read through the entire cost breakdown there. One last thing before we jump in. Creating resources like this take an enormous amount of time and energy, and so sometimes we set up affiliate links with vendors to help offset that cost. That means if you follow those special links to products we've mentioned, we may get a small percentage of that sale if you buy. Not all links are affiliates. In fact, we're only linking to products that we genuinely recommend. And in many cases, we're gonna share with you ways to buy that may bypass our affiliate links anyway, so you can save more money.
Our first priority is to help you save money building your system, but if it makes sense, use the links.
Oh, and just to cover all our bases, I am not certified or licensed as an electrician. All of this information is for entertainment purposes only, and if you ever feel uncomfortable trying to do any of this work yourself, please reach out to a qualified individual. Cool? Let's dig into the full cost breakdown of our off-grid solar system.
First off, because we know that you are going to ask, why did you not just put the solar panels on your roof? It's a great question.
It is a great question.
The reason is, this building is built to take advantage of passive solar, which means we have south-facing windows on the front and our roof is slanted to the north.
And because of where we are located, that means that those panels would get very little sun because they're tilted completely the wrong way. As you'll see, the solar panels were relatively cheap compared to that ground mount. So if you have a way to mount panels to an existing roof, you will save a lot of money. First up is our solar panels. Now, we bought used residential solar panels from a company called SanTan Solar. They're in Phoenix, Arizona, and what a lot of people don't realize is that residential and commercial panels can both be replaced fairly early in their life cycle due to contracts. They still work great, so SanTan actually buys them, they test them all, and then they sell them back, and they're way cheaper than if you were to buy them new.
And how much cheaper are they, babe?
They were only $25 a piece. They're 240 watt panels, and we bought them during their sidewalk sale. So like if you go to their site now, the price is higher than that, but one time a year they do a special sale, and that's when we happen to do it. We bought 30 of them. It cost us $712.50. In order to connect all those panels in series of 5 and then go back to the combiner box, we had to buy a whole bunch of 10 gauge solar PV wire. So we bought 300 extra feet of that. It only cost about $150. And then we had to buy 24 MC4 connectors. That cost us $40. And then we made up our own cables to make those connections. Those custom wires were then connected to combiner boxes. We got 2 combiner boxes because we have so many panels. Those cost $132 for both of them, and they do have a lightning arrestor inside them as well as fuses.
Now, out of the combiner box, we ran 500 feet of 6 gauge wire into our solar shed.
Now, why was it 500 feet?
Because we have multiple wires traveling 100 feet.
Right, 4 wires, 2 positives, 2 negatives, because we had 2 combiner boxes. So
extra coming in and connecting to what it needs to connect here.
Yeah.
We also purchased 3 8-foot grounding rods and lugs.
For how much?
For $45.
Now we get to the fun part, the ground mount. Like we said before, the mount itself cost
so much.
Almost 5 times as much total as the actual panels themselves. And the biggest cost by far was the 3-inch Schedule 40 pipe. Absolutely. That we needed to build it with. That cost us $1,763.83.
And that includes them bringing it out to us because
we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
It was 8 21-foot pipes.
Right.
So it's a lot of steel, it's super heavy. They did have to deliver it, and we'll talk about delivery fees at the end of this section. But that was only part of it. Mm-hmm. We still had Quickcrete. Mm-hmm. We had
so much Quickcrete. This is a ridiculous amount of Quickcrete. We used 236 80-pound bags, and it cost us $844.14.
Now, if you go back and watch our other video, we go into detail explaining why we had to build this ground mount so robust. It's because of our wind events here, our sandy soil, so we had to make huge holes that went down like 5.5 feet, and that's why we needed so much concrete in this particular case.
Right.
Your case may be different, but for us, that's what we had to do to build it safely.
So it's 5.5 feet deep, 2 feet wide. We're talking at least 20 bags of cement.
Per hole.
No, concrete, yeah. Per hole.
And there were 8 holes. To make the process a little easier for building, we also bought a bunch of cinder blocks and we stacked them up, and then we're able to sort of set the horizontal poles in place. And that only cost us $178. You could totally do it without that, but it made it easier for us.
I like doing it this way because we can always reuse those cinder blocks for other projects here on the homestead. So I was okay with spending that much money for cinder blocks.
And we have. We've used them for all sorts of stuff. And then we're going to get into all the Iron Ridge components. So Iron Ridge is the one that helped us plan this ground mount. They're the racking system that you are going to attach to the pipe that you've already set up, and it will let all the panels sort of attach safely. And it does a bunch of other stuff too, but it was an important part in us being able to plan the system for the wind and the soil conditions and all that stuff. So the main component is the rail, and we went with the XR1000 rails because they're like the big heavy duty ones, right? We needed 12 of their 17-inch rails, and that cost us $720.
For this mounting system, we needed 72 UFO clamps.
Now, what's a UFO?
I don't know.
It's a universal fit object, and it does kind of look like a UFO.
It's specifically from Iron Ridge.
So it's a piece that locks into the top of the main rail, and then it's got like kind of a little hat on it, and the hat holds down the solar panels. And so you put them 2 in on each side at the top and bottom, and then all that connects together. Yeah. You torque it down.
It's a clamp.
It's a clamp. Yes.
Yeah, and that cost $140.40. We also needed 24 stopper sleeves.
Right, so at the top of the array and the bottom of the array, that UFO needed a flat surface on it to hold the panels, and so that's what those are.
Those 24 sleeves cost us $6.72.
That's pretty cheap. We also needed a grounding lug that connects to the frame and then to your ground rod. That was a grand total of $3.93. And then we did need some important pieces to help connect that Schedule 40 pipe together. So there's the top cap. We needed 8 of those, and that cost $290.64. And then we needed 24 rail connectors, which attached the actual rail to the Schedule 40 pipe. That cost $241.20. And then, just to sort of finish things off, we bought end caps and wire clips. You totally don't need those, but the end caps will help debris and stuff from getting inside the rails, and the wire clips just kind of help you, put your wires up so they're not hanging everywhere.
Makes it neater too.
Yeah. We needed 40 of each of those, so we got 40 wire clips and end caps, and that was a grand total of like $39.50, so pretty cheap.
We also needed 6-gauge bare copper wire for grounding, and that cost us $31 for 50 feet.
So if you're looking through our cost breakdown article, you will see that not everything has a link, and the reason for that is that, there's not really a way to link to hundreds of feet of Schedule 40 3-inch pipe. Some of this you have to source from a hardware store or like an industrial metal supply store. So that's going to be by far the cheapest way to source this, so we didn't even bother to put links in. And finally, delivery fees, which we kind of talked about earlier.
You may not have delivery fees if you have like a trailer that you can haul 20 feet of pipe on.
True, a flatbed would have saved us a ton of money, but we didn't have one and we didn't know anybody that had one. And
also we live in the middle of nowhere, so delivery fees are high.
Yeah, so we paid $300 for the Schedule 40 pipe to be delivered to us, and another $300 to deliver all the Iron Ridge components.
Pricey.
So $600 in delivery fees. If you have a way to transport those materials yourself, you can save a good chunk of money.
So the grand total for the solar ground mount system that we paid, $5,666.30.
And remember, the panels themselves cost like $700.
Right.
So the majority of that cost was the ground mount. Again, if you've got a roof, if you've got somewhere you can go ahead and put them on, do that. And one thing we realized sort of after we went through this whole process is we came into this looking for sort of the cheapest panel, and we weren't really worried about how much space they would take up because we got 11 acres. Like, we thought we'll just build a really big array. We didn't realize how much that ground mount would cost. If we had bought sort of the same size panel but with a higher capacity, we could have built a smaller ground mount and saved a bunch of money that way. I mean, at the end of the day, if we ever want to add higher capacity panels to what we have now, then we just have a whole bunch of solar, and it's okay. But if you're trying to save money up front, then yeah, just maybe spend a little more money on higher capacity panels.
Let's talk about our battery bank.
We did something a little unconventional.
Of course.
We were looking for ways to save money on this install, and it turns out that if you source your lithium battery cells directly from China manufacturers, you can save a ton of money. That's not to say that this whole process doesn't come with some caveats. We go into detail in that other video about the entire process of buying from start to finish. It was super weird, but at the end of the day, we got a ton of battery storage for a fraction of the cost. And so let's talk real quick about the whole buying in the US versus buying in China thing. The more research that I did, I realized that almost every American company that was selling lithium battery cells were actually buying the same cells from China, putting them in their own packaging, putting their own proprietary tech and sensors and stuff on top, and then just marking them up and reselling them. I think Tesla's the only exception. They actually manufacture the batteries here, but everything else is assembled here, but they're using those same cells anyway. So if you know how to assemble your own battery packs, which we're going to talk about, then you can save boatloads of money.
Boatloads.
Boatloads. So we went with REPT cells, 280 amp hours, lithium batteries, they're 3.2 volts. We bought 32 of them for $3,827.11. That is 28 kilowatt hours of storage for less than $4,000. And that is shipped from China, like that includes the freight. If you've done any sort of research into buying batteries from somebody in the US, you know that the cost can range from anywhere to 3 to 7 times as much for that same amount of storage. So there's potentially tens of thousands of dollars of cost saving here.
One thing about the batteries that we didn't like was the cheap bus bars that it came with. So we decided to build our own with copper bar stock.
Yeah, we got 1/8 inch, 1.5 inch copper bus bar. We bought 16 feet of it, and that was $170.
Which sounds kind of pricey.
It is, but you know, like we wanted as much flow through as possible, and then we just cut it and drilled it and built it ourselves.
So all of those bus bars are custom made.
Mm-hmm.
These lithium batteries also need to be compressed.
Right.
So we use 3/4 inch plywood and all thread, and we just sandwich them together.
Yeah, so we had to buy, we bought one sheet of 3/4 inch plywood. We used that for the bottom for them all to sit on, and then pieces on the end to sandwich it together.
And we also used the leftover for other things.
We did, yeah.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Now, as you know, at least as of 2022, wood prices are all over the place. Mm-hmm. So at the time, we paid $40 for that sheet. It wasn't anything super high grade. And then we needed the all thread rods, and then nuts and bolts and washers and lock washers to hold it all together. That all cost us about $120.
For building the battery box, we also needed some angle iron, some bar stock, and square tubing. And that cost $260.
So the reason that we built our battery box out of metal and welded it together is that we had a very small space in the corner of the solar shed. So we needed a frame that was as small as possible. If you wanted to build your own battery box out of wood, you could totally do that, and it might cost less depending on what you're viewing this in.
And when we say that we welded this, we really mean our friends, beginning from this morning, Juan and Michelle. They actually came and helped us and showed us how to weld this together.
Yes, so thank you guys so much. We couldn't have done it without you.
And now I need a welder.
Now you need a welder. And finally, we just had a few other items like wires and fuses that we'll go through real quick that were sort of tied to the main system. So we needed 2-aught cable to run from the battery into the main system and into the inverter. We needed 20 feet of red and black. Also, that particular pack that we found on Amazon also comes with 5 lugs as well in each pack. So we had 10 lugs, 20 feet of black and red wire. That cost about $115 for each pack. And then we needed a few more lugs, so we got 5 of them for $11.81. Then we needed a 300 amp T-class fuse to protect the system. The housing was about $44, and the actual fuse itself was about $50. And finally, we needed a battery switch to make sure we could turn off the power from the batteries to the system if we ever needed to work on anything, and that was only $30.43.
So the grand total of the battery box was $4,779.53.
Nice.
Sounds like a lot.
Sounds like a lot until you look at buying those other types of cells. Remember, that's 28 kilowatt hours of storage. That is a fraction of the cost for what most people pay for that kind of storage. I wanted to take a minute to share an important big picture idea behind this install and how we managed to do it so cheaply. And that's the idea of smart versus dumb components. I see so many people that put all their money into solar panels and batteries, buying brand names, thinking that these components are going to make a huge difference in the quality and usage of their system. But really, both of these are dumb components. A solar panel just takes sunlight and turns it into energy. A battery just stores energy and can be charged or discharged. I'm okay with buying used certified solar panels and sourcing battery cells directly from China, because I know that these items, while important to the system, don't actually require the sophistication that many of us think they do. It's the other smart components that are going to make the difference. By putting a little more money into my smart components, my solar charge controllers, my BMS, I can protect those solar panels and batteries better over the long term and save potentially tens of thousands of dollars in the process. It's the charge controller that pulls maximum power out of my panels. It's the BMS that protects the batteries and keeps them balanced so they last for years. And most importantly, it's the inverter that needs to provide clean, stable, 120 volt power that won't ruin everything I connect to it with dirty power. So as we get into these smart components, and you may be wondering why I'm buying something a little more expensive like a Victron as opposed to like a Grow Watt, that's because I have decided to save money on panels and batteries so that I can invest into what I feel like are higher quality smart components for the long term.
Talk about the REC BMS. I can't even say it with a straight face. I don't know what it is.
Guys, a battery management system is super important for a lithium battery bank, right?
Yeah.
A good BMS should protect your batteries from overvoltage and undervoltage, protect from temperature extremes, charge and float the cells properly, and balance the cells. We chose REC BMS because it does all this and more, and it talks natively to our Victron equipment. The BMS install was definitely the most complicated part of the wiring, at least. There's like 50 wires coming out of the thing. So we're gonna give you just a list of all the components that we recommend, because a BMS is not just a BMS, it comes with multiple components that all have to talk to each other for it to work. If you have questions about how it works, go check out that other video.
Our main BMS unit was $559.75.
Then there's the current sensing shunt. We got a 200 amp, it costs $69.95.
We also have temperature sensors, and that was $37.90.
There's also a pre-charge resistor delay, which we recommend for a 48 volt system. It helps sort of protect your contactor from a big inrush of current since the voltage is higher. That costs $85.45.
There's an REC Wi-Fi module,
which we also recommend because it allows you to change any setting on the unit from your phone or your laptop, anything that can connect to the Wi-Fi. Otherwise, you gotta like hook up a PC, install all these crazy drivers, run a cable to it. It's like a whole thing, and this makes it much easier to update.
And that costs $198.55.
They also sell a touchscreen display that gives you more granular information. And some of that you can get by going to the web app and the Wi-Fi module. But if you want to just go over there and touch it and turn it on, you can see what the voltage of each cell is, what the temperatures are. It gives you a lot of good information. That cost $208.95. Then there is a special cable that connects to the Victron Color Control GX. It is a VE CAN cable, and it costs $28.45. Then there's the main sort of heart of how the whole BMS works, is that there's a contactor, and that contactor is how the BMS lets the power from the batteries go through to the rest of the system, and it only allows that if all of the checks are good. That's the point of the BMS, is that it wants to protect the system and shut things down if any of those situations that it's looking for don't match.
Like temperature,
voltage.
I was gonna say wrong.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Temperature and voltage.
Temperature and voltage are the main ones. That costs $189.05.
Okay, what's next?
Current sensor harness.
$18.95.
And we needed some small wire to make most of these connections, because we needed big wire for some of it, but most of it's just sort of connecting to individual cells, and it's just sort of passing data. And so we needed like 100 feet of it. We paid $18.70. Pretty simple.
Yeah, grand total, $1,415.70.
Now, a couple of important things. This unit that we used has 16 inputs, and so we grouped our batteries in packs of 2, so we would have 16 cells, even though it was 32. And that way, each cell had its own wire. If you want to go bigger, then you have to buy additional units. So they do sell like a master unit, and then you can connect multiple units underneath that, each with 16 inputs on each one. So if you want to go down that road, go for it. It seemed a little expensive and complicated to us, so we just decided to keep it simple. And finally, if you do follow any of our links to REC, we do have an affiliate relationship with them. But also, let me tell you the best way to buy the unit. You want to go to the main unit, and then all these other things that we listed are listed as accessories and add-ons underneath that. And when you add on to the main system, you actually save 5% per thing. So make sure you don't go like add them individually to your cart, build the system that way.
I think now is a good time for you to talk about our solar wiring guide.
Yeah, so as part of this project, I created a super detailed wiring diagram of everything all connected together. The charge controllers, the inverter, the BMS, the batteries, all of it, where every single wire goes, how it connects. I know that I am a visual person, and seeing it from a high-level overview was really helpful for me. So we made this high-res wiring diagram and also individual wiring diagrams for every single component, and you can check out the link in the description if you want to buy it.
Now for the big guy, let's talk about our inverter.
Yes, so we decided to go with Victron, and the reason for that is that they have a thing called the Victron Color Control GX, which acts as sort of the heart of your whole system. Everything connects to it, and you get all that information in one display. And then with that, it creates what's called the VRM, so you can access your installation online anywhere in the world and see all the stats about it. It's really helpful. So first up was the Victron Color Control GX, which like I said is what everything connects to. It's a little pricey, it's $516.80. And then we got the inverter, the big dog, like you said, the big guy.
It's 5,000 watts, surges to 10,000 watts.
Yes.
Can you believe I remember that?
That was impressive. Nice. That was good. That was real good. But it's only 120 volts. And we talked a little bit in our other video about why we decided not to go 220, just our personal preference. If you need 220, I believe the way you do that is you actually buy two inverters, you connect them together, and that way each one runs a single phase. So you get split phase when you have them both together. Obviously, that's way more expensive, and we decided we didn't need 220, so.
But it is something that we could add on to later if we wanted to, right?
For sure, yeah. We would probably add a whole other battery bank to power that one as well, and then,
It's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. But totally doable. Now you're gonna need a bunch of custom cables for this because remember, everything connects to that Color Control GX via different protocols, right? So let's talk about those real quick.
The VE direct cable was $37.40.
We needed two of those, and I believe they went from the solar charge controllers into the Color Control GX.
Then there's the VE bus or Ethernet cable, and it was $24.
Yeah, so of all these cables, this is probably the only one where I would recommend trying to save money on. All the other ones are Victron cables. Just buy them from Victron. Don't try to get cheap knockoffs. But this one is actually just really an Ethernet cable, so you can get those anywhere. Now, in order for the VRM to actually push your information to the cloud and be accessible from anywhere, it has to be connected to the internet, obviously. So you can either run an Ethernet cable from your router straight into the back of it, or in our case, we weren't really close to that, and so you can get a USB Nano Wi-Fi module. These are pretty standard. You plug it in the back, and then you just go into the settings and log into your existing Wi-Fi network, and then it's connected to the internet. Words, nerd. Yes, I know. I'm sorry. It was only $22. And finally, as sort of part of this install, there was another set of protection. It's a C-Series double pole toggle circuit breaker, 200 amps. It cost $116.03. And that comes from the batteries through the switch into the inverter as another set of protection for the system.
Double pole toggle circuit breaker.
It's a lot of words. Yeah, I know. Oh, and one more thing. If you want to do any programming on the inverter unit itself, you can do it with the dip switch dance. There's like a panel you take off and like tiny dip switches and a button. You can do that, but it's awful. It's the worst. So what you can do is buy their MK3 to USB cable, plug it up to your Mac or PC, download their software, and make a lot of those settings that way, which I wish we had done, but we didn't. I would recommend you check it out. It's expensive, it's $69 for the cable, but if you need to change any settings in that inverter, that's the way to go.
The total for the inverter and the color. Grand total for the inverter and the color controlled GX was $3,327.58. That sounds like a lot, babe.
It does, but you know, the inverter is what gives us 120 volt power that we connect everything to.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a good place to spend money if you're going to do it.
And you feel like 5,000 watt inverter was an appropriate size for us?
I think so. We're just barely scratching the surface of this system right now because we haven't built our house yet and the house isn't connected. So the theory is that should be enough, especially with that 10,000 watt surge. But we'll see. And if it's not, then we'll just, like I said, add another inverter, we'll chain them together, we'll make it bigger. There's lots of options there for expandability if we need to.
Sounds good, babe.
Thanks, babe.
Hey, let's talk about solar charge controllers.
Cool. Yeah, so just because we have solar panels doesn't mean we can just hook them straight up to the batteries.
It's true.
Would cause an explosion probably. So you need something that will sort of fill and float those batteries, will slow that solar energy down if the batteries are full. Charge controllers are really important, especially for a system that's this big, right?
So important.
So important. Now, because of the way we connected our panels, and because we're still thinking about future expandability, we decided to get 2 solar charge controllers because we had 2 combiner boxes. One combiner box is full, the other combiner box still has 2 open circuits on it. So if we want to add more panels, we can do that. We went with the Victron Smart Solar 250 volt, 85 amp TR. These are big charge controllers. They're not cheap. Like I said, we got 2 and they cost us $1,669.40. Again, if we wanted to, I think we really could have just used one and saved ourselves $800 or $900. But again, we're thinking ahead, and so we went ahead and put 2 in so that it wouldn't be a huge pain to expand if we wanted to. As part of this, we needed quite a few additional cables and fuses, so let's talk through those real quick. So we had the PV wire coming in from the combiner boxes, and that actually went through a 40 amp 250 volt circuit breakers, one for each set of power from each combiner box. Circuit breakers protect the system just in case the other circuit breakers at the combiner boxes were to ever fail, so there's just extra protection. Out of that, we ran 2 gauge wires, so we needed black and red. Let's see, we needed 20 feet of each one, and each of those cost about $50 for each set. And then we needed lugs to go with that, because again, we're crimping on our own stud lugs to each of those cables. So that cost us $13.88 for 10 of them.
Okay.
Cool.
We needed 50 feet of 12 gauge wire for grounding. How much did that cost?
That cost $26.25. And then we had more circuit breakers.
So many circuit breakers.
Big circuit breakers. These are those C-series pole toggles, but these are both single because there's one for each section, right? Mm-hmm. Those are 100 amp circuit breakers. We needed 2 of them, and that cost us $70.
That's an expensive circuit breaker.
One thing I'll say about these C-series pole toggles, it is impossible to find anything to mount them in. We had so much trouble. Like we built a custom metal facing for the big one, and then we tried buying something online, but like it wasn't C-series or I don't know. It had like a circle instead of a square, and we had to like Dremel out all this stuff. I don't know what you're supposed to put these things in. It was a huge pain in the butt.
It was.
Just so you know.
Because I had to Dremel it.
You did. You were very.
And then we didn't even use it.
No, we used it. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
Which one?
The one in the middle.
Yeah, we did use it.
We did use it.
Okay.
Okay.
Grand total for all the solar charge controller gear, all of it, was $1,900.49. That's a lot, babe.
Now we're going to talk about conduit, wire, service entrance, like things that you need that are going to be a little different for everybody, but it's important not to forget this during your cost calculations because things can add up really fast. Like many of the other items in the cost breakdown, we do have some Amazon links but honestly, just go to the hardware store. Your cost per piece is gonna be like half or a quarter. I don't know why stuff is so expensive on Amazon, but it is. Like, and then you can't buy Conduit on Amazon. Right? It just doesn't really work that way. Okay, so let's talk about all the different pieces. And again, like what we needed is going to be very different from what you need, but this should just give you an idea of what all might be involved if you're doing conduit runs. First up is the main wire that comes out of the inverter, right? You've got 120 volt power, it's got to go somewhere. And so we opted to go with 6-2 wire. And I know that's huge and probably overkill, but again, we're just thinking ahead. If we ever decide to go 240, or if we decide to add another inverter, we just want to make sure we aren't having to pull wire back out of the ground and redo it all.
You can only go through that service entrance so many times.
So we bought 175 feet of 6-2 wire for $400, which is a lot.
That is a lot, babe.
But you know what? We're investing in our future.
Aww.
We also needed some things like junction boxes. We got a 8x8 PVC junction box for $34. We got two 30 amp RV plug outlets, one to plug our Airstream into, and then one that we actually took apart and put a NEMA 30 amp RV electrical socket that's sort of like the opposite, so we could plug in our generator and charge the batteries if we needed to during an emergency. The total cost, sorry, I kind of skipped over cost. The power outlet boxes were $35 each, so $70 total, and then the plug itself that we replaced was $31.
We also needed some unistrut to mount all this PVC stuff too.
Right.
And that cost us $18.
For just a 10-foot piece.
Yeah.
And then we cut it up and used it a few different ways. In order to clamp the PVC to the unistrut, you need pipe clamps, and we bought 6 of those at $23.
We needed 160 feet of 1.5 inch PVC conduit, and that cost us $296. Then we also needed 100 feet of 1.25 inch PVC, and that was $230.
And so if you can see from this overview, you can see we had some pretty long trench runs, and that's why we had to buy so much conduit. We also needed 90-degree bell curves because we had a lot of different ways that we were going with that PVC, and so we bought 11 of them for $44. And remember, not the sharp corner, like bell curve all the way, because when you're pulling that wire, you need a smooth turn. Over at the solar panels, we needed a way to get that PV wire to go down into the ground but be protected from the elements. So we used a service entrance head. It only cost $10. Then we needed some PVC male terminals, 1.25 inch. We got 4 of those for $5 total, pretty cheap. Then we needed some rigid steel locking nuts to hold those in place. Got 4 of those for also $5. Then we needed LB connections, and those are sort of those 90 degrees, so we have pipe coming up out of the ground, and then we had to go through the wall of the building. We got 3 1.5 inch ones for $25. So most of the conduit we bought already had sort of a bell end on it that you could put the next piece into, but we did have to buy some additional conduit couplers, 6 of them for $7 whole.
The total for this section is $1,198.
See, if you hadn't thought about that, that's a lot of money that you need to have sitting around to be able to actually run all those wires and connect everything.
Now let's talk about some tools and connectors.
Yeah, if you've never had to make your own cables or do any sort of electrical work, there's a chance maybe you don't have some of these tools laying around.
We definitely did not.
We didn't, we had some of them, but not all of them. And so obviously you don't want to be in the middle of this job and be like, oh crap, I need a wire crimper. So we're just gonna run over sort of all the things that we realized we needed to have on hand when we were doing this install. First up is a heat gun.
Yeah, we didn't have a heat gun, but luckily our friends who are helping with this project did. And it's important to have a heat gun because you're gonna add that heat shrink on each connection.
Yeah, each cable that you make, you put it on there and then you use that heat gun and it shrinks it up and it's got glue on it and it sticks it all together. Anyway.
It's called heat shrink.
It's called heat shrink, yes. It's good to have. But yeah, so.
How much is the heat gun?
So the heat gun is only $21.10.
Sweet.
Pretty cheap. Okay, also you're going to need an assortment of spade ring and butt terminals. it's just a good idea to have an assortment pack sitting around because you never know what kind of connection you're gonna need to make. There's hundreds of these options on Amazon. The one we got was $18.95.
What's next, babe?
Well, the heat shrink that we were talking about earlier.
Oh.
Yeah, so you can also get assortment packs of heat shrink.
Yeah, we needed all different sizes.
We did, but so first, get yourself just like a normal assortment pack of heat shrink. That cost us $9.97.
But we needed like the bigger size, right?
So because we did so many of the 2/0 cable size, however much of that size heat shrink that came in that assortment pack was not enough. So we had to buy extra 3/4 inch tube heat shrink. That was $12.49.
Whoa.
Breaking the bank. Red and black, of course, for both because you want to try to keep that to match your wire color. Another way we connected wires were with Wago connectors, and so these are little plastic things that have these ports that you push the wire into and it kind of locks it down and holds it and it makes that connection, and then you can flip up the lever, pull it back out if you need to change it. You can get these with 2, 3, 4, 5 sort of ports on them, and we just got a big old connector pack that came in handy.
What was it called?
A Wago connector.
Way to go.
$12.82.
We also needed a 10-ton hydraulic crimper.
Whoa, sounds like a lot.
It's 10 tons.
So you could be like us and you could buy yourself a really cheap hammer crimper. And
don't be like
stick it in there and take a sledgehammer and just knock it and like get it to crimp, but that's not the best connection. So a hydraulic crimper just gives you a lot more power. I don't know, it's hydraulic. It's 10 tons, yeah.
10 tons of power.
Guys, it's only $54.99.
How come we didn't get one?
If you're gonna be doing large custom wires, I think it's a good investment.
I do too. It's a really good investment.
And of course, if you're doing any electrical work, you should always have wire strippers and wire crimpers. Those are easy to find at any hardware store. On Amazon, you can get it for $23.99 for the crimping tool and $8.99 for the wire stripper. Now, you may remember that we built a metal battery box for our lithium batteries. In order to do that, we needed to weld it together. Obviously, if you don't want to deal with metal, if you got more room and you want to build it with wood, totally doable. But if you want to use metal, you will need a welder. And believe it or not, you can get started with a small welder relatively cheaply.
Yeah, which has me questioning why we still don't have one.
You can get one for $226.
My birthday's coming up.
It is coming up.
You should probably get me a welder.
She got to weld some of the box and she really liked it.
Also want a plasma cutter one day, so.
Okay, slow down. Also, when you weld, you need a mask and gloves, right? So get a mask for $35, some gloves for $23. Really, if you want to weld, I mean, guys, we're talking like $300 here. Less than $300 to get started.
Yeah, how come we don't have one?
And finally, fish tape.
We do need fish tape.
It doesn't have anything to do with fish.
No.
But it does help you pull wires over long distances.
Yeah.
And it really helped us for our like 100-foot runs. However, because our runs were so long, that means we had to buy the really long spools of fish tape. So that was a whopping $179.
However, this is something that we are going to be using more than this project.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. We can definitely use it again. All right, you want to do the total for this section?
For tools and connectors, your total is $626.30.
And now, the moment you've been waiting for.
Don't do it like that.
I'm going to do it again. Here we go.
Don't do it that way. Don't do it.
And now.
No, please. Please don't.
The total you've been waiting for.
Don't do it.
Okay, finally, we're getting to the total. I know, we spent a lot of time talking about everything, and you just want to know how much the dang thing cost.
Okay.
So we're going to tell you.
Right now.
Ready, set, go.
Okay.
Okay, first section was solar panel array and ground mount for $5,666.30.
Then the lithium battery bank, $4,779.53.
The REC BMS for $1,415.70.
Victron color control GX and 5,000 watt Quattro inverter That is way too many words on there. $3,327.58.
Our MPPT solar charge controllers, $1,900.49.
Conduit and wire was $1,198.
And tools and connectors, $626.30.
This brings our total to $18,913.90.
So almost $19,000.
Yeah.
Now remember, this is for a 7,200 watts of solar, 28 kilowatt hours of lithium storage, and a 5,000 watt inverter at 120 volts for only $19,000. And if you take off like 5,000 of that for the ground mount, we're talking about 15 grand for a massive off-grid solar system.
Now, this is not just for the solar shed. This is going to power our Airstream, our solar shed, and eventually our house.
Yeah, so this is a big investment for here on our property. And by sort of piecing these elements together and by approaching it from the smart versus dumb components, we were able to source the panels and the batteries much cheaper and then build the whole system ourselves and save boatloads of money.
Boatloads. Boatloads.
Buttloads? Boatloads.
I always say buttloads. Do you say boatloads? I say buttloads.
Well, I usually say boatloads, but I was trying to keep it PG.
Oh. You can save boatloads of money. We hope that this cost breakdown helps you build your own off-grid solar system and save you a ton of money.
And don't forget, if you have more questions, we have that other video for the full install. We have a wiring diagram for purchase, a solar cost breakdown article so you can read through it and click the links, and a cost calculator that you can buy to help plan and price your own off-grid solar system.
If you found this video interesting, we are just getting started here on our own off-grid homestead.
Yeah, besides building unique off-grid sustainable structures, we're also doing rainwater catchment and even other solar systems. So we've got so much going on. We'd love to share it with you. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our next project.
We'll see you next time.